I found CE5 after I had those experiences because.
And for those that don't know, C5 is close encounter of the fifth kind. Right. So this is past. This is making a mental connection with a UFO.
Kind of, yeah.
Is that how you would describe that?
Right. So it's a proactive or interactive quality to contact. So you have the basic close encounters, but what makes close encounters of the fifth kind different is that it's intentional, right? And or it's interactive, because even people that study CE5 don't know that there's different degrees of it. There's a CE5 of the second degree, which is that you see a UFO, you happen by random chance to see a UFO, and then you're looking at it, right? Like I did randomly, right? Random, which I don't think that was, but. And you think something, and the UFO now is reacting to your thoughts. That's an interaction, and that's a CE5 of the second degree. CE5 of the first degree is when you yourself or with a group go out and request and invite. Because people say summoning.
That's interesting.
That's the wrong attitude. Nothing's being summoned. You're asking, right? Okay. You're not telling the UFO phenomenon to do anything. They're going to come if they want to, kind of thing, right? So when people use the word summon,
that makes sense. That's a good distinction.
It's just something. It's a word that's been used and popularized.
I probably said it, but I don't know what I don't know what I'm saying. Right?
Like, no, it's not that you don't know what you're saying. It's just something that's commonly used. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't like the connotation.
I see your distinction.
Yeah, I think it's important to be clear on those aspects, because it's an invitation. That
changes it completely. You're right.
It does.
It really, totally makes it different.
Because if you go out and you say, I'm going to summon a UFO.
Well, it's the power dynamic.
Right.
So who's really in control here?
Yes, correct. And also, it's the attitude and the spirit in which you do it in. Because if you're going out to summon orbs, good luck. If you're going to go invite the UFO phenomenon for an interaction, politely, right? You're much more likely to get some kind of response too.
Now, I've famously said on the show here that I won't do CE5. In fact, I want to give a shout out to two of our mods who are part of the channel, Ali and Justin. They practice CE5. I'm all for it. They're great if you want to look into it more. But I've always said, like, I'm scared of, like, I don't know what these beings are. Why am I going to ask them to come interact with me?
I started, so when I first got into CE5, I was like super pro CE5, right? Like, why not? Because I thought, like, everybody should have this experience. But you don't know what you're going to get. And I made videos on this before on my channel. You could have the most beautiful CE5 experience, and it could mess you up if you're not ready for it. Even if the contact was super positive and awesome, you could be like, why the F am I working this meaningless job? Why am I with my partner, right? I should be doing this 24/7, whether it's research or I should be getting the truth out, or I'm just a meaningless drop of nothing because there's all these other intelligences. It's like, why am I even here? So, and this could also happen on people on an awakening and spiritual journey, right? They call it the Dukanyana, the dark night of the soul. Some people, it could just enhance them and they can have a great outcome from it, and it's awesome. But you don't know until you're there what's going to happen. And then, even if you have a positive experience and you're like, this is great, and you try to explain it to your partner, right? They could just be like, I didn't sign up for this, and if they have a different fundamental view of reality or religious view, I've seen it in different ways, break up long-term partnerships, and it's pretty devastating.
You make some great points. I mean, really, you do.
And everything was well-intentioned and positive. The contact was
100%.
Seemingly positive.
That's even more dangerous, isn't it? Because it seems you're more likely
I was
to be more vulnerable.
Yeah, and I was pulled into everything. So it's like I almost feel like I don't want to say I didn't have a choice, but I didn't really. I mean, as far as I know, some people speculate, well, you subconsciously decided to participate. I don't know. As far as I know, there was no agreement or something. I was just thrust into it. I'm grateful for everything that I've been through, right? Even the near-death experience. I wouldn't be the same person without it. And in my opinion, it changed me in a lot of ways for the better.
Very good.
But for some people, that may not be the case. Maybe in the long term, yeah, I don't know. But, you don't know what's going to happen. You might have the intention to have a UFO experience, and you do. And when you do, you open up this whole kind of psychic dimension. And even though the UFO experience is positive, now you're seeing entities or ghosts or having crazy dreams, or maybe it opens something else up that you're not prepared for. You didn't have even in your awareness that this is going to happen, right? Like the Skinwalker Ranch, Skinwalker effect, and the hitchhiker effect, and all that. Like once you open that door, be ready to have an open door, right? You unlock the door. So again, that's interesting. You could have nothing but pleasant and positive and great experiences.
Do you still practice CE5 now to this day?
I do. I used to do it too much, right? Like I had an extreme, like I if there was like a level of, they say you do something 10,000 hours. Like if there was a level of like a scale of CE5, I'd definitely be on the level where it's like a professional level. Like,
yeah,
I was doing it daily for years.
The aliens were like, "Hey, dude, stop, James. Okay, yeah, okay,
okay. Like we didn't sign up for this. We just wanted to, no, but
funny. I get it. Were you just getting a rush off of this connection?
I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn through the interactions. I wanted to.
Were you getting downloads every time you were having the CE5 experience, or just sometimes?
It's again, when you get into the download things, it's not all apparent. Like it's not all like I see a UFO and automatically I have all these thoughts. Right? It's not always like that. You can have a UFO sighting, and it could take you weeks to unpack what actually happened, right? Months.
Interesting.
And you're just suddenly having these different realizations of boom, oh wait, this. And then, it's not linear. As people say linear, non-linear, and all that stuff. It's not always obvious in that way. Sometimes it absolutely is. But there's other
that makes
times.
Sense. Right. If
where
it's
like
different.
It's just all of a sudden one day something unlocks, and when you're participating seriously in CE5, and that door's open, you could just walk outside one day without doing any of the CE5 protocols or practices, and boom, you're kind of in the mix now. So they're there, and you're like, holy shit. And I want to point out to people that CE5 people are going to be familiar with that term from Dr. Stephen Greer. He coined it in the 1990s.
Correct.
And I went out with Stephen Greer on a few expeditions. But he didn't create contact in that manner. He designed the CE5 protocols, but CE5 itself is not contained just to those protocols. Okay? That's one important thing.
He has his protocols and his.
There was a group in Lima, Peru called Mission Rama that was doing the same thing in the 1970s, and I have videos on this on my channel where they had video footage.
Mission Rama.
Yeah, Mission Rama.
Okay.
They had two different spellings: Rama and Rahma. And again, I have some videos on my channel where they invited journalists and they said, "Hey, there's going to be contact on this day." We had a program sighting. So Rama would do similar. They do meditation, and they used automatic writing, which is when you just like let your hand write, and then they would start to write down messages that came from another intelligence.
Venga, por favor, venga. Mire, hazme caso y vamos allá, ¿ya? Por favor. Hacia allá, ve usted. Hermanita, por favor. Vamos a centrarnos en un lugar, ¿se dan cuenta? Ya, tú no a pasar a nadie.
There's a whole interesting and compelling history to Mission
Rama.
Rama and six topaz wells that people should look into, and I've done videos on.
Interesting.
But you can. There's a
You
whole
know,
thing to
Rama
that.
means branch.
Well, they, six
Is
topaz
that how they're
wells
meaning it?
was six top. I think he was sun, Ra for sun, and M Ma for earth. The sun and the earth. They had this. They just like CE5.
Yeah, but that is
and the
interesting in Spanish. Rama does mean branch, like branching out, right? Like
right. They could have meant that too.
Connecting, right?
But the way they describe it was also, they specifically described it as the sun and the earth, and
Sure.
H. They added the H later for humans, so humans are bridging. They got a little culty, okay, like
Got
a
it.
lot of these groups, right? That of course they have.
What if
all
Rama? That's where that comes from. That's why it's called a branch, because it's like connecting with the gods, like, and that's why.
I don't know. I mean, that's
I love language.
I love language, but that's
probably a stretch.
I would think that the language predates any of this. Yeah, but that.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, we had to give that word a meaning, right?
Right.
When they were naming branch in Spanish in Peru, they were like, okay, Rama, because it's in every Spanish country. This is
Latin,
honestly. Yes, well, Latin, Spanish-speaking country, right? Honestly, this is a tangent; it's not worth getting into. But just language and the way it goes down, because not every Spanish-speaking country uses the same language for everything, right?
Right.
So,
right. There's
like, it's all different. So,
dialect.
The fact that they use Rama in all of them is interesting. Meaning that's a pretty old Spanish word that's still carried out, but it is interesting how they gave words their meaning, like what that meant, and then did it come from something like that? I don't know. Whatever. I'm beyond
riffing.
that. Anyway, I'm riffing. It's a bad riff. It's like when a guitarist did a solo and everyone's like, dude, that was bad. I just did a bass solo. Basically, no one. I don't know. No one cares about bass solos. Okay. Anyone that does knows we just had a bass solo. I just had a bass solo. Anyway. Please continue.
Well, no, it's important to note here with Mission Rama that they were doing the same, not exact, but more or less the same exact thing that Stephen Greer is doing, but they called it program sighting. So they would get messages and be told the date and time and location of where a sighting or an encounter would take place, and they would have an interaction. So they invited journalists to come out one night. They said at this date, this location, there's going to be a UFO sighting, so we're going to go there. And it ended up happening the day after, but there were mainstream journalists in Peru that got video footage of one of these sightings. And, this is in I think the actual video footage is maybe from the 80s, 70s, or 80s.
And there's footage of it?
Yeah, and it's clearly an anomalous thing. It's not there's no drones back then doing that, and if there is, like, that's a classified program basically. Sure. So, and if they knew the time and location psychically of a classified program, that's just as cool in my opinion in some way. But so that happened. They got video footage. They're doing the same thing as Greer. So CE5 as a whole is not just the CE5 protocols. Although the CE5 protocols, if people are interested, they work, right? It more or less, they're good training wheels. It's a good guideline for people to use and practice with. It's like a foolproof way that you can have an interaction with UFO intelligence if you're open to that, or what have you. Again, if you did your whole disclaimer thing and realize that you're gonna, the people that are just gonna do it are just gonna do it, right? Like
100%.
So,
absolutely.
But for the people who are wary, if you're wary about it, don't do it, right? We don't need, it's not for everybody. Just like meditation isn't for everybody, or bass solos is not for everybody.
Yeah,
it is
good
what it
callback.
is, So I'll put a disclaimer, but at the same time, if people are going to do it, they're going to do it, and
100%. I recommend people. I tell people all the time, hey, I don't want to do it, but if you do, go check out X, go here, go there, for sure.
I think we need people to do it on some level, right? It's another path of inquiry. It's another, path of learning about the UFO phenomenon, right? You're not researching a cold case that happened last week or yesterday, whatever. It's a living, laboratory. You're interacting in real time, and that's an amazing opportunity.